Okay, all right. Well, we went over the questions already, I think, for the exam, so there's no need to go over the questions again. Do you guys want to just pass it along, or do you want me to hand it back to you guys one by one? Either way, it's fine with me. Okay, I'll just go ahead and hand it back one by one. To Bernadette. Constantinos. Here. Sam Roger. Teresa? Is Teresa Nakatani here? Okay. Andrew Francis. Just remember, this is the first exam, which is about 20% of the final grade. So don't get too depressed if you're not getting a good score or the score that you think you'll be getting. Picard.
Grades not on the test.
Sorry?
Grades not on the test.
Grades are.
The grade isn't written on the test.
It is not written on the test. Thomas Jackson. Is Thomas Jackson here? Nope. Okay. Troy. Alexi Duff. William Childs. Colton Christensen. Here. Tamar. Rowan.
Oh, wow.
No, I did.
Oh.
Okay, let's see. Mohammed. Stephen. G. Angela. Karen. Isaac. Good. Adrian. Is Ben Ryan here? Okay. Liz Dupree. Okay. Joseph White. Fabian. Miyu. M-E-U-Y. That's the first name. Here. Okay. Mark. Clark. Christopher Wright. Andrew Portlock. Is Andrew here? Russell. And we have the last one, Nick. All right. right. So what you need to do after the class, I think some of you, very few probably have checked your grade. Yep. Oh.
Thomas Jackson.
Sorry?
Thomas Jackson.
Thomas Jackson, yeah, I remember. There's no score on the exam, so there's no worry that someone can see anyone's score. Go. Okay, so the first thing you want to do is, if you want to know why you get a certain score, is to go to the class grade link. So once you log into the class, I can switch role to a student so I can show you exactly what you should be seeing. You can go to grades, which is under administration, and it's going to give you, the role taking stuff, which is, the usual stuff, and it will give you also exam one. Exam one is a big category. In other words, you can see that exam one will include a category called exam one question one, and within exam one question one, it is broken down into its own components. Each one will show you the full score you can get for that particular category, and it will show your score here as well. If you see a dash, it means, for some reason I have forgotten to grade yours or it has been misfiled. So if you see a dash but you actually did turn in something, you should let me know. Okay? Because if something or if a particular answer is missing, I will put a 0 to register that I have gotten the exam and and it's missing. There's no answer. I would always put a 0. If you see a dash, you definitely want to get my attention, so I can fix that. Exam 1, question 2 also has its own categories. This one is just separated by the pre and post conditions. There are 5 of those, so each one has 5 points to add up to the 20 points. Question 3 and question 4. Question 3 is the really easy trace, so that's why it does not really have any subcomponents because it's either getting it or not getting it. Most people got that one. I think those are 10 fairly easy points. Question 4 is also really hard to give, to break it down, depending on how people explain it. I try my best, to use a consistent scale to grade question number 4, but it's more or less, like grading a writing assignment for the most part. There are definite answers that are, deserving all 10 points, okay? But there are many that are kind of like falling in between. In some cases, I can easily tell, pre-3 is done correctly, pre-2 is done correctly, and then pre-1 is kind of not, is missed. So in those cases, I would give, that person about 6.66 points, which is, 2/3 of all the available points. But some other times it's really hard because, okay, pre-3 is almost right, is kind of right, almost have the right reasoning. And then step 2 is completely wrong, but step 1 is also kind of right. So in those cases, I would give partial credit. But it's hard to explain why people are getting the credit they're getting. Okay, so that one is a little bit, it's a little bit difficult to, give you a hard number and say this is why you get this number. Okay, are there any questions so far? No questions? Okay. I'm not sure whether I turn on ranking, because if I turn on ranking, you can actually see the ranking in the class. It will only display your ranking. So if the class has 25 people, the ranking will be somewhere between 1 and 25. Some of these I left feedback, especially for question number 4. For people who are getting partial credit, I probably left some sort of feedback so you can actually see the feedback of what I think of the answer. If you get full score, you're unlikely to get any useful feedback. I usually just say well done or good job or something along that line. Are there any questions about the exam? Or how do you find the score, the grade for this exam? No questions? Okay. All right, if there are no questions, we'll go back and continue with our topic. First thing is to kind of go back a little bit and see what we have talked about on the 6th last week. We have started to talk about arrays, I think. Effective but wrong, find prime. Okay, let's take a look at text. or maybe not. It doesn't look like we have started on arrays yet. We are just starting, okay? According to this, we were just getting started with arrays. I presented an algorithm that can find the maximum of any number of variables. Before, we have specialized algorithms. In other words, we have one that will find the maximum of 2 variables. We have another one that can find the maximum of 3 variables. We can extend this logic to find the maximum of any number of variables. But the expense or the price that you have to pay using this particular method is really high. Every time I add a single variable, you have to change a lot of lines of code, which means it is not the way of doing things. The way to do things is to utilize arrays, because with array indexing, we can finally use a simple or relatively simple algorithm to find the maximum of any number of variables. Is that where we stopped? I just kind of introduced the rationale of why we need arrays. Yes?
Yeah, it's about what we saw.
Okay, very good. So we'll start from that point and go forward with that. We are currently in chapter 7 or section 7, so make sure that you are reading the same modules as what we'll be talking about. We have just explained why we need arrays. Okay? Without arrays, it is really difficult to write algorithms that are scalable. In other words, you can write algorithms that can work for 2, you can make algorithms that can work for 3 variables, and so on, but it's really hard to make algorithms that can work with any number of variables. Arrays can do that, so that's nice. We really need to understand how arrays are used. I think last time I also drew a picture of a box containing some containers. So we'll go ahead and redraw that box. An array is a box, a container of some sort. The name of the array is the name of the box itself, and I typically use ABC, for the array, the names of arrays. Inside the box, you can have a number of individual items. In this case, let's say we have 4 individual containers. These containers inside the box, they are not named. They don't have a name like X, Y, Z. They don't have a name like I and J and so on. They are numbered. The first one is numbered 0, which is called the index of the first element. The second one is numbered 1, 2, and 3 in this case. When you want to access a particular container, let's say we want to access this one, then you say that I want to access container 2 of box A. That's how you address an individual variable when you're dealing with arrays. Are we doing okay so far with the concept of an array? Now, what makes array really interesting is before we talked about arrays, we have individual variables. We have variables named like W, X, Y, and so on. The problem with individual variables is it is named. This one has a name of W, this one has a name of X. In other words, if you have a line that looks like this, W gets a particular value, this line can only be used on a particular container. This line cannot be applied to another container because the containers are uniquely named. The thing about arrays is you can use the array indexing operator. Okay? In fact, I would write it like just A bracket, square bracket, dot, 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 and then use the right arrow. Left arrow symbol, and then an expression on the other side. This is interesting because